At dawn, as the first cold rays of sun slice through the night sky over snow-capped mountains, mountain man Jack Harper carries a tiny newborn in his arms, wrapped in a rough hide. He has just found this child abandoned in the merciless freeze and knows that leaving it means certain death. The night is full of secrets and dangers, and the path to the forgotten village where an old church stands seems endless. In these silent mountains, no one believes in miracles, but Jack, a man who has endured much himself, now bears the fate of this fragile life on his shoulders. He knocks on the priest's door at midnight, and so begins a story that will upend not only his life, but the entire town. For the secret of this infant hides a connection to an exiled criminal, and when it unfolds, the priest will face a choice: betray or protect. Jack, the rugged hermit, becomes a symbol of hope in a world of cruelty, where one act of kindness can change everything. This is a tale of compassion amid hardship, where frozen hearts thaw and destinies intertwine. Snow continued to fall as Jack Harper descended from the mountains, the newborn bundled tightly against his chest. The path to the village was treacherous, slick with ice and shadowed by towering pines that whispered warnings in the wind. Jack's mind raced with doubts. What if they turn me away? What if my past catches up here? He had been an outcast for years, known as the man who avenged his family's death with ruthless justice. The town below held grudges, and the church was his last hope. As dawn broke, the old wooden church came into view, its steeple piercing the gray sky like a beacon. Jack knocked on the heavy door, the sound echoing through the empty streets. After a moment, the door creaked open, revealing Father Thomas, an elderly priest with a weathered face and eyes sharp as a hawk's. He held a lantern, its flame flickering uncertainly. "Who knocks at this ungodly hour?" Father Thomas asked, his voice a mix of caution and curiosity. "Jack Harper, from the mountains," Jack replied, his breath visible in the cold air. "I've got a child here, found abandoned in the snow. He needs shelter and care, more than I can give alone." The priest's eyes narrowed as he glanced at the bundle. "Come in, quickly. The cold is no friend to the innocent." He ushered Jack inside, where the air was warmer, scented with incense and wood smoke. A small fire burned in the hearth, casting long shadows on the stone walls, adorned with faded icons. Father Thomas examined the infant, his hands gentle, but his expression troubled. "He's barely clinging to life. Who are the parents? Why bring him to me, a simple priest, and not the sheriff or the orphanage?" Jack hesitated, sitting on a wooden bench. "I don't know the parents. Found him half buried in a drift, crying faintly. As for why the town knows my name. They'd see me as a threat, not a savior. But you're a man of God. You understand mercy." The priest nodded slowly, but suspicion lingered. "Harper. The name rings a bell. The Avenger of the Highlands, they call you. Rumors say you live like a ghost, avoiding judgment. Is this child truly found, or is there more to your story?" Jack's jaw tightened. Internally, he wrestled with the truth. Tell him everything, or keep the shadows hidden? He decided on partial honesty. "The rumors are half true. I lost my family to outlaws and took justice into my own hands. Been alone since. But this boy, he's innocent. I couldn't leave him to die." As Father Thomas warmed milk over the fire and fed the baby, he probed further. "There's a mark on his swaddling, a crude emblem. It looks familiar, like something from the exiled families down in the valley. If this child is connected to them, Bringing him here could stir trouble. Jack's heart skipped. Exiled? Like the bandit clans? The priest confirmed with a grave nod. Yes, if word gets out, they'll come for him, or the town will reject him as cursed. The conversation deepened as the storm raged outside. Jack shared fragments of his isolation, the loneliness that had hardened him. Father Thomas listened, offering quiet wisdom. God places burdens to test us. Perhaps this child is your path to redemption. Jack pondered. Redemption? After all I've done? Yet, holding the now calmed infant, he felt a spark of possibility.
By mid-morning, the priest agreed to help temporarily. I'll shelter you both for now, but we must investigate this mark. Stay hidden, the villagers will gossip. Jack nodded, grateful but wary. The chapter builds tension with dialogues revealing character depths and hints at the secret's gravity, setting up conflicts with the town and Jack's past.
As trust tentatively forms between the mountain man and the priest, Jack reveals more of his haunted past, but a raging storm outside mirrors the turmoil brewing in his soul, threatening to unearth secrets that could destroy everything. Father Thomas awoke before dawn, candlelight flickering over dusty ledgers spread across the sacristy desk. Jack Harper stood beside him, arms folded, watching the priest trace ink-faded family crests. Outside, wind hammered the stained-glass windows, rattling them like warning bells. "This," the priest whispered, tapping a crude raven sigil in the margin, "matches the stitching on the child's swaddling. It belonged to the Black Ridge clan, outlaws banished 8 winters ago. If rumor reaches the valley, they'll ride up here, and blood will follow." Jack's jaw clenched. Memories of burning rafters and screaming kin flooded back. "I won't let history repeat," he vowed. "If Black Ridge men come, they'll meet the mountains first." Father Thomas closed the ledger. "Vengeance forged you, Jack. Protection must temper you now." He handed Jack a wooden rosary, a reminder to guard life, not take it.
Throughout the week, Jack labored in silence, chopping firewood, repairing pews, fetching water from the frozen well. Villagers drifted into the chapel, curious about the stranger. Jack avoided their eyes, yet children peeked at the quiet baby cradled near the altar. Whispers spread. Some called Jack a guardian angel, others a harbinger of trouble.
One evening, the sheriff arrived, boots echoing on stone. He eyed Jack's broad frame and scarred hands. "Here tell you brought a babe out of thin air," he said coolly. "Town law demands every orphan be recorded." Father Thomas intervened. "The child is under the church's care until his identity is clear." The sheriff's gaze lingered on Jack. "Keep it lawful, Harper. Folks don't forget old grudges." He left, spurs ringing warnings into the night.
Later, Jack sat by the hearth, the newborn asleep on his chest. Embers glowed, casting soft light on the infant's peaceful face. Father Thomas approached with a steaming mug. "I wired distant parishes. If the mother lives, she'll find this boy here."
Jack stared into the fire. "And if the Black Ridge ride first?" "Then we stand between darkness and innocence," the priest replied. Snow battered the roof, yet inside, a fragile sense of family formed. The grizzled hermit, the aging cleric, the nameless child. Jack found himself humming a lullaby he hadn't sung since his own son was alive. Emotion tightened his throat, and he whispered, "You saved me, little one, more than I saved you."
But peace was short-lived. At dawn's first light, distant hoofbeats echoed down the valley road, hard, deliberate, too many for travelers. Jack stepped to the doorway, hand resting on his rifle. Father Thomas joined him, eyes narrowing at the rising dust cloud.
"They've come sooner than we feared," the priest murmured.
Jack tightened his grip. "Then the mountains will test all of us."
A storm of steel and memory gathers as riders approach the church, forcing Jack to choose between the violent justice of his past and the fragile mercy he now cherishes.
The village was restless. Whispers curled like smoke through the narrow streets, carrying tales of Jack Harper and the mysterious child he cradled. Mothers hushed their children, and men exchanged cautious glances. The symbol on the swaddling was no secret here. It belonged to the feared Black Ridge clan. Jack kept to the chapel's shadows, wary of every gaze. Yet the infant's soft cries drew a handful of curious villagers who dared to peek through the open doors. The priest warned of judgment and fear, but hope flickered where none had before.
One afternoon, the heavy boots of Sheriff McBride thundered on the church's worn planks. Years of policing a town chained to old grudges had carved stern lines across his face.
"Harper," he growled, "I hear you've got a child with you. The town demands to know who'll raise him." Father Thomas stepped forward, calm but firm. "The child is under our care until his true identity is revealed."
The sheriff's eyes narrowed on Jack. "Remember the law, Harper. Keep this lawful. The town watches, and it forgets nothing."
Tension rippled through the room as Jack met the sheriff's steady glare. Yet within him stirred a new resolve. The child would be safe, no matter the cost.
Outside, the village whispered and waited, the coming storm unspoken but inevitable. A distant cluster of riders approaches, bearing the Black Ridge sigil. Jack steels himself for the looming showdown, torn between the brutal justice of his past and the fragile hope he now protects. The wind howled across the valley all night, driving snow against the chapel windows with a fury that rattled the ancient glass. At dawn, Jack Harper stood in the choir loft, staring down at the nave lit by guttering candles. The infant lay swaddled in a makeshift cradle near the altar, a single point of fragile warmth in an ocean of stone-cold doubt. Father Thomas paced beneath the loft, rosary beads cricking anxiously in his fingers as he rehearsed the words he might offer the villagers once the doors opened for morning prayers.
Jack's thoughts churned. 30 hours had passed since he carried the baby through the church doors, yet every tick of the lantern clock clawed at his nerves. He had spent 2 decades mastering silence, stalking elk at dawn, tracking outlaw prints through snow, slipping unseen along cliff ledges. Now his life was a hurricane of whispers. Somewhere beyond the church walls, gossip multiplied, feeding on the curiosities and fears of a town that already saw monsters in the timberline. He pictured angry farmers gripping pitchforks, merchants closing shutters, mothers clutching children close.
The infant whimpered. Jack descended the narrow stairs 2 at a time, his boots thudding on the oaken planks. He scooped the bundle into his arms and felt the child's tiny fists clutch at his beard. A surge of protectiveness roared inside him, the same raw instinct that once drove him to storm a bandit hideout after his family was slain. But vengeance and guardianship were 2 different fires. One consumed, the other illuminated. Which would burn brighter now?
Father Thomas halted his pacing. "He needs warm milk," the priest said. Jack nodded. The previous evening they had traded stories beside the hearth. Thomas reminisced about seminary days in distant Santa Fe. Jack revealed fragments of mountain lore. In that fragile fellowship, they discovered a mutual purpose, shielding an innocent life from an unforgiving world.
They lit the kitchen stove in the rectory. As the milk warmed, Thomas unfolded a battered ledger across the table, the parish registry. Between entries of births, deaths, and marriages lay scribbled notes about the valley's darker undercurrents, outlaw sightings, missing livestock, rumors of witchcraft. The Black Ridge Raven emblem, crude yet unmistakable, appeared in the margins beside tales of arson and ambush. Thomas pointed to one such notation dated 8 winters prior. Black Ridge clan expelled southward, swore vengeance on town and church.
Jack's pulse hammered. "If one of them returned," he whispered, "they left the baby to freeze because he was a burden or bait." The thought sickened him. Could the innocent in his arms be a trap?
Before the priest could answer, the chapel's front doors boomed. Startled, milk sloshed over the tin cup. Jack set the baby in a wicker basket and drew his rifle from the wall. Father Thomas raised a cautionary hand. "Violence will seal their fear," he warned. Together, they walked into the nave. Sheriff Caleb McBride stood framed in the doorway, his badge gleaming like winter sun on steel. Behind him crowded 9 townsfolk, farmers, shopkeepers, a teenage girl clutching her mother's apron. All stared past the priest at Jack, who lowered the rifle but kept it within reach. McBride removed his hat, brushing snow from the brim. "Mornin', Father, Harper." His voice held neither warmth nor outright hostility. It was the measured tone of a man paid to keep order with minimal bloodshed. "Town council charged me to confirm rumors. Word is you harbor an infant of questionable lineage." Thomas squared his shoulders. The child was abandoned. Mr. Harper saved his life. Until we learn more, the church provides sanctuary, in accordance with scripture and conscience. A stout butcher named Griggs spat onto the floorboards. "Black Ridge spawn is no blessing. Last time they roamed these parts, 4 houses burned." Murmurs of agreement rippled.
Jack stepped forward. "The child's guiltless. Judge me if you must, but leave him be." An old woman with frost-bitten cheeks shook her cane. "Your history drips with blood, Harper. You think we forgot? My nephew fell when you raided those cutthroats after your family died."
Jack swallowed hard. He remembered that night. The outlaw gang had used townsfolk as shields. A stray bullet had taken the boy. The wound never healed in the hearts of his kin.
Sheriff McBride raised a gloved hand. "Enough. We're here to gather facts, not stoke feuds." He addressed Thomas again. "Can the church keep the child safe? If not, the orphanage in Cedar Ridge."
"No," Jack interrupted, voice low but unyielding. "He stays with me." The conviction startled even him. He had spoken as a father might, not a drifting hermit.
Thomas noted the change. "Sheriff, grant us 3 days. Let me send riders to Cedar Ridge, El Paso, and Fort Union. If any mother claims her child, we'll comply." He met Jack's gaze. "Otherwise, the church will baptize him, and Mr. Harper will assume guardianship under my supervision."
McBride considered. Outside, icy wind moaned through the eaves. Finally, he nodded. 3 days, no more. He turned to the crowd. "Go on. Business as usual." Most obeyed, though some lingered with dark looks before grudgingly filing into the snow.
When only the priest, the mountain man, and the sheriff remained, McBride softened his tone. "Harper, you've seen hell. Don't bring it back here." Jack met his eyes, reading both warning and reluctant respect. "If hell comes," he said,
I'll keep it at the gate." After the sheriff departed, Father Thomas exhaled shakily. Jack returned to the basket. The infant slept, tiny chest rising and falling beneath a patchwork quilt sewn from chapel altarpiece scraps. Jack gently brushed a stray curl from the child's forehead. That night, while Thomas penned letters by candlelight, Jack repaired the church's crumbling south wall, stacking stones with methodical purpose. Each gesture felt like repentance, mortaring broken places, forging strength where cracks had spread. Yet he sensed fate tightening like the mortar itself. The Black Ridge clan would not ignore rumors of a lost heir, and in protecting this child, Jack feared he might ignite the war he spent years avoiding. Past midnight, flakes drifted through a damaged window pane, landing on Jack's scarred knuckles as he rocked the cradle. He whispered a promise no one else could hear. "You will not grow up hunted. I'll build you a world where men answer to mercy before steel." The baby stirred, as if dreaming of warmer days. Outside the rectory door, unseen figures crept along the graveyard fence, silhouettes dismounting horses, lanterns extinguished against the wind. Snow muffled their boots, but fate could not silence their intent. The raven had returned to roost. Dread clawed Jack awake moments before a pebble struck the window. He nudged Father Thomas, extinguished the candle, and peered into the dark. 5 shadows moved between headstones, rifles glinting in moonlight. Jack's hand tightened around the stock of his Winchester.
The first bullet shattered a stained glass pane depicting St. Michael, scattering shards of crimson and cobalt across the nave. Jack Harper crouched behind a pew, steadying his Winchester as splinters rained around him. Moonlight slashed through the jacket hole, illuminating swirling snow and the vague silhouettes of 5 Black Ridge riders fanned across the graveyard. Their voices rose in drunken taunts. "Send us the babe, Harper. We only need his blood to seal old debts." Inside, Father Thomas knelt at the altar, whispering prayers while shielding the infant with his body. Each detonation made the priest flinch, yet his trembling hands never left the cradle. Candles toppled, wax spattering the stone floor like fallen stars. Jack's pulse hammered, but a different fire guided him now, one that sought to shield, not to destroy. He leaned out, squeezed the trigger, and a warning shot snapped a headstone inches from the nearest marauder. "Next one finds flash," Jack called. "Back your horses off." The riders answered with a volley that thudded into the wooden doors, driving the parish cat shrieking up into the rafters. Footsteps pounded behind Jack. 2 townsmen, Miller the carpenter and young Clara's father, Ezra, burst in carrying old muskets. Their faces were pale yet resolute. "Belle woke us," Miller panted. "Figured you could use extra barrels." Ezra glanced at the baby, eyes softening. "My Mary lost a boy last winter. This child deserves to live." Jack nodded gratitude, assigning positions along the window slits. More villagers arrived. The tailor with the revolver that hadn't fired since the war, the schoolmarm clutching a lantern and bandages, even stooped Mrs. Rutledge, who had once cursed Jack for her nephew's death, handed Father Thomas a satchel of tonic herbs. Fear still flickered behind their eyes, but something stronger, community, had taken root. Outside, the Black Ridge leader dismounted and strode forward, coat billowing like a raven's wing. Lantern light revealed pock-marked cheeks and a silver tooth that flashed when he smiled. "You've stolen what's ours," he shouted. "Give the brat here, and we'll ride on." Jack stepped into the doorway, rifle lowered but ready. Snow swept in, settling on his shoulders like ashes. "He's not a token for your grudges," he said. Turn back, Owen Blackridge, or test the weight of this town's conscience." Owen barked a laugh. "Big words from a hermit whose name is Mud. Think these shopkeepers will die for you?" He gestured, and two men dragged a bound figure into view. The sheriff, bruised and gagged. Gasps rippled through the church. Owen pressed a knife to McBride's throat. "Trade the babe for your lawman. Clock's ticking." A collective shudder ran through Jack's allies. Eyes darted to him, waiting for orders he never sought. He inhaled the incense-tinged air, remembering another night of hostages in flames. The night vengeance forged him. He would not allow history to repeat. "Cover the windows," he whispered to Miller. Then he strode barehanded into the snow, rifle slung across his back. Icicles crackled beneath his boots. 30 paces separated him from Owen. Beyond, pale gravestones jutted like broken teeth. "I'm here," Jack said, raising empty palms. "Release the sheriff. The child stays." Owen's grin faltered. "You'd bargain with nothing?" "I bargain with myself." Jack unbuckled his gun belt, dropped it in the snow, and kicked it aside. Behind him, stained glass fragments glimmered in moonlight like a shattered halo. Silence pressed on the graveyard. Wind hissed through bare aspens. Owen studied Jack's eyes, seeking fear. He found iron. With a contemptuous grunt, he shoved McBride to the ground. The sheriff scrambled toward the church, wrists still bound. Owen lunged, knife flashing. Jack pivoted, caught Owen's wrist, and the two men grappled between tombstones. Snow flew as boots churned powder. Years of hauling elk carcasses in felling pines had honed Jack's strength. Rage had once sharpened it, but tonight resolve tempered every blow. He wrenched the blade free, flinging it aside, then pinned Owen against a marble angel. "You think blood buys debt," Jack hissed, "but debt ends when someone refuses to pay in kind." He released Owen and stepped back. "Right away, no more graves tonight." For a heartbeat, Owen stared, chest heaving, disbelief wrestling with pride. Distant shouts signaled townsfolk advancing with torches and makeshift weapons. Their numbers turned night's silence into a low thunder. Owen's men shifted uneasily. "Fall back!" Owen spat. "This ain't over." They mounted, retreating into the dark, snow swallowing hoofbeats until only the wind remained. Jack exhaled, feeling his knees threaten collapse. Villagers surrounded him, some cheering, some weeping. Sheriff McBride, freed by Miller's knife, clasped Jack's shoulder. "You saved my hide and the town sold tonight." Father Thomas emerged, the baby cradled against his chest, candles glowing behind him. His eyes glistened with unspoken thanks. Mrs. Rutledge stepped forward, gripping Jack's rough hand. "I misjudged you," she said softly. "Forgive an old woman's bitterness." Jack managed a tired smile. "We all carry our winters." He looked at the infant, who blinked up at the swirling snowflakes as if they were stars. In that tiny gaze, Jack saw a map to a future untainted by vendetta. Townsfolk helped mend shattered windows and stack pews against further assault. Throughout the night, they brewed coffee, tended bruises, and sang hymn fragments that floated beneath the ravaged vault like fragile threads stitching hope into stone. When dawn's first light painted the eastern ridge gold, Jack stood atop the church steps, rifle restored to his shoulder, watching the white horizon. Somewhere beyond those peaks, the Blackridge clan licked its wounds, but so did the spirit of vengeance within him. He realized it had not died. It had been redeemed, forged into a shield rather than a sword. Behind him, Father Thomas placed a gentle hand on his back. "There will be consequences," the priest said. Jack nodded. Then let's meet them in the open. Dawn broke over the valley, painting the snow in hues of pink and gold, as if the world itself sought to wash away the night's violence. Jack Harper stood on the church steps, rifle slung over his shoulder, surveying the graveyard now scarred by bullet holes and trampled snow. Bodies of the fallen Black Ridge men had been dragged away by their retreating kin, but the air still smelled of gunpowder and fear. Villagers emerged from their homes, faces drawn but determined, converging on the chapel like pilgrims drawn to a miracle. Inside, Father Thomas prepared the baptismal font, filling it with water drawn from the well at first light. The infant, now named Samuel in honor of the priest's late brother, lay in a cradle fashioned from pew wood and soft linens donated by the townsfolk. Jack knelt beside him, brushing a callous finger across the baby's cheek. "You've turned ghosts into guardians, little one," he murmured. The child's eyes, wide and trusting, reflected the stained glass light like tiny prisms of hope. Sheriff McBride approached, hat in hand, his usual sternness softened by the night's events. "Harper, what you did, holding back when you could have ended it all, that took more courage than pulling a trigger." He glanced at the gathered crowd, farmers, merchants, widows, and children, who nodded in quiet agreement. Mrs. Rutledge, her earlier bitterness melted away, stepped forward with the quilt she had sewn overnight. "For the boy," she said, voice trembling, "and for you, to remember you're not alone anymore." Word had spread like wildfire. Jack's stand against the Black Ridge Raiders had not been one of vengeance, but of protection. Whispers of his past, the avenger who lost everything, now mingled with tales of redemption. Even Griggs, the gruff butcher, clapped Jack on the back. "We were wrong to judge. Town needs men like you." Father Thomas called for silence as he lifted Samuel into the font. The water rippled gently, and the priest's voice echoed through the nave. "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, I baptize thee, Samuel Harper." Gasps rippled. Harper? Jack's surname, bestowed without question. The priest met Jack's eyes with a knowing smile. "If you'll accept guardianship, the church and town stand behind you." Jack rose, his throat tight with emotion he hadn't felt since burying his own family. "I accept," he said, voice steady, "but I'll raise him right. Part in these mountains, part among you. Teach him strength from the wild and kindness from the hearth." Cheers erupted, hats tossed into the air, and for the first time in decades, Jack felt the weight of isolation lift. He was no longer the ghost of the peaks. He was a father, a neighbor, a man reborn. As the ceremony concluded, a rider galloped into the square, dismounting with a sealed letter from Cedar Ridge. Father Thomas read it aloud. A distant cousin of the Black Ridge matriarch claimed no knowledge of the child, but renounced any blood right, fearing further feuds. "Let him be raised in peace," the note ended. Relief washed over the crowd. The threat dissolved like melting snow. Jack cradled Samuel outside, the sun warming their faces. Villagers pressed forward with gifts, blankets, milk goats, promises of aid. Sheriff McBride tipped his hat. "You've earned a place here, Harper. No more running." In the quiet aftermath, Jack walked with Father Thomas along the church path. "You gave me back my soul," Jack confessed. The priest chuckled. "No, my friend, you found it yourself in that child's eyes." As weeks turned to months, Jack built a cabin on the village edge, blending mountain solitude with community ties. Samuel grew strong, his laughter echoing through the valley. Jack taught him to track deer and read the stars. while the town shared stories of forgiveness. The Black Ridge name faded into legend, replaced by tales of the mountain man who chose mercy over might. Years later, on a crisp autumn day, Jack watched Samuel play in the churchyard, a sturdy boy with his adoptive father's resilient spirit. The scars of the past remained, but they no longer defined him. In saving one life, Jack had redeemed his own and a town's divided heart. With peace restored, Jack settles into his new role, but a final visitor from the past arrives, bearing a revelation that could upend everything once more.